Here we go, round one. We are on the draw. Opponent has kept. We have only white lands, but we can curve out very nicely, and we have one of our bombs in hand, so I'm not going to mulligan. I actually think this is quite a good hand. Of course, it would be better if one of our planes was another basic land, but having a good curve is certainly worth quite a bit. Looks like we are facing off against Thalids here. Plane's basically the worst card to draw, and it's going to be interesting to see how quickly our opponent comes out of the gates, and if he can, wow. Yeah, that looks really quick. So I believe that there was a time in Magic where if you were only allowed a single card, then a single creature to play, basically, then Thalid was one of the fastest killing creatures in the format. But or maybe it was 1-mana creatures, I can't remember exactly. But now I'm really scared about what's going to happen. We basically need to put up blockers, but in a certain way we also need to be aggressive, because we can't beat the Thalid production long term. And hopefully the Saltfield Recluse is enough to dissuade our opponent from attacking. There aren't that many tricks that actually get played in this format, which is why I like Test of Faith so much. But if our opponent has an Echoing Courage here, of course, then things are going to get ugly really quickly. Pellet Mycoderm, also a problem. It does look like we got in some damage here. So Veteran Armor is nice, but of course the Mycoderm is going to be a real problem. There's going to be 3 Saprolings on the way, so we probably don't have much more time. I don't think that our deck is beating this draw. So now Pellet Mycoderm is basically overrun, and our opponent's deck does explain why we didn't see many Thalids during the draft. Yeah, Penumbra's were actually pretty weak in comparison, but hopefully we do have some more time here. Let's draw a card, because we don't have red anyway. Not having a play here would be kind of awkward, but can't really help it. We do have the Valkyrie for next turn, but if our opponent plays this just a little bit aggressively, then we are going to be history. For some reason, he's content with just letting his Thalids grow. Yeah, and that's the reason. So I probably just want to play the Valkyrie here. The problem is that I'm basically not beating this board state at all. I can Fiery Fall, Pellet Mycoderm, but it only costs my opponent 2 2 saprolings to have it survive. So I'm just going to hope that my opponent doesn't go for the kill, doesn't go for the throat. But he has 8 saprolings coming out if he wants at end of turn. Yeah, and there they are. So I somehow don't think that this is going to bode well for us. We might just be dead on board, actually. Let's see. This is another counter. So there was one additional saproling. There is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 attackers, and I have 4 blockers. So 8 get through, and then yeah, we are super dead. Okay, I think we were super dead. Let's just pretend we didn't notice and continue the action. Test of Faith, probably not as good this time around. There's a Penumbra Spider, so that could potentially block, but don't think that's going to happen. Well, doesn't really matter. We are attacking anyway, so... no blocks. So... Fiery Fall is definitely an option here. But once again, it is going to mean that our opponent probably just saves the creature we target with 2 saprolings. What we could do is kill a Thalit pretty convincingly with the Fiery Fall, or we just pretend that we aren't dead and play an Umbra Seekers. Well, that doesn't really do anything though. If I had the feeling that my opponent would f6 after making the fungus, for example, the saproling, sorry, then we could try to just kill the Microderm, which is kind of almost our best shot here. There's still some crazy hope that our opponent leaves us alive. So I think we can try to kill the Changeling, because it does cost our opponent a lot to keep it alive. It does give us another creature to block with, and it is a Thalit and a saproling, so kind of happy to get that. It does feel kind of weird continuing this game, given that we are just dead, but I'm not going to concede. Still no blocks. So we have our opponent down to 10. And we have quite the force on defense. Yeah, this deck is just insane. With the triple Thalid draw. I'm thinking of reasons why our opponent didn't attack, and one option is that he just completely forgot about this ability. An alternative would be that he thinks it only pumps Saprolings, so that he needs a lot more for them to be lethal. But at some point, all of this is probably going to be irrelevant. As long as he remembers that he has an ability on Pelt Mycoderm at all. Let's see if we can get an attack here. Yep, looks like it. And that's just going to be so lethal. Now I probably want to be blocking the fungi because the Saprolings can be sacrificed even if I block them. So let's see, I'm just going to try to prevent as much damage as possible. Maybe kill a creature or two. I don't think this block really matters. I'm just going to do it because I might as well. Now, at this point, our opponent has some more Thalids, somewhat Saprolings stored in his creatures. Yeah, I believe 2 more. So even those are more than lethal. Yep. That's a lethal attack. Easily. Hope that we have something in our sideboard for this matchup. Kind of afraid that we aren't really looking at a good matchup, given that our opponent cast 3 Thalids on turn 1 and 2. And we're also going down to -70 here. Okay, good game. So one option is definitely just to kill his early Thalids, and we do have the options to do so. We one of our the strength of our deck is the removal suit, so we can't really complain about that. But our draw definitely wasn't made for that. Stir the Pride is another option to maybe mess with his math, and Sense Enlistment would be trying to beat him at his own game, which is also something I could get behind. I think both of these are probably better than the Test of Faith, because this just isn't the matchup for Test of Faith. And Emerald Seekers is only okay, but we probably don't want to cut it just because it's still a fine creature to have. So let's see, Skyreach Manta is another option, but I think it's too expensive. We won't have that much time, and if we do, things are going fine anyway. So yeah, I'm going to try the Enlistment. If our opponent has the Overrun guy, the Mycoderm, it's not going to be good, but in all other cases, it gives us some extra blockers and helps us win with the Trump. Let's see what we open up with. Oh, that's a nice hand. We have a turn 2 Scholar, we have a Bound in Silence. Not great against Thalids, but okay. And we have a turn 5 Cloudgrove Ranger, so definitely not mulliganing. Also, 3 mana for a potential trump that remains. And only missing red, which is okay. This hand could also make great use out of a Rebel Searcher, giving us great late game. Or more planes. Okay, let's see what we have here. Perfect mana, a Shell Dweller, an Ancient, and Verdeloth. Well, that's something. We do have the Bound in Silence, but Verdeloth comes with an Anthem ability, which makes all his Sap Rollings 2/2. Well, I think that's okay. I can get behind that. I have a feeling that we should take the Shell Dweller, because otherwise it's going to stop the little bit of offense that we have. So yeah, taking that probably robs our opponent of his turn 2 play. He basically has to cycle this for a green, and then he has a pretty clunky draw. And I don't want to play Bound in Silence on the Shell Dweller anyway. So hopefully we can get in for a little bit of damage here. We are in this awkward position where we are basically forced to raise our opponent's deck because the Thalate late game is just too strong. Yep, that's cool. We did take the Dweller, but our opponent just drew another one. So I think I'm just going to Bound in Silence here, playing this as aggressively as possible. We know that our opponent isn't going to be playing creatures in the upcoming turns, or at least that's what I hope is going to happen. So Tidehollow Scholar could potentially bring our opponent down to 14, which would be very nice, because then Cloudcore Ranger needs one less turn to finish the job. And just being aggressive here also means that our opponent might not have the same options as the game goes longer. We still know what our opponent is on, because he played the island. So far hasn't cycled the Gleam of Resistance, but has to do so next turn at the latest, because otherwise his Ancient couldn't come down. So yeah, there's the second green. Now I'm hoping that our opponent doesn't draw a spell to cast here. That would be huge. On the other hand, there aren't that many cards probably in his deck that he can't cast at this point. He's already holding a 5 and a 6 drop. So yeah, Imperiosaur. Yeah, that's a good card. We have a Torrent of Stone. That's actually a great card to draw here, as we will be able to kill Saproth Ancient before it grows out of control. It's not that our opponent isn't going to make creatures, but the impact is going to be so much lower. We are lacking blockers for Imperiosaur at this stage. I don't want to just throw away the armor, and I don't want to give the Shell Dweller back. So let's take 5 here, and then if we want to chump, then we still have that option next turn. All the 1/2 Kithkin soldiers are pretty good at holding back Sap Rollings as well. Kind of like... well, we don't really want to lose a Kithkin soldier because it is our main source of evasion here. Oh wow, Marsh Flitter. That's huge. Now, the Ancient gives our opponent one more sap rolling next turn, thanks to the Shell Dweller, and then there might already be Verdeloth coming down. But Marsh Flitter just deals damage, and damage is what we want here. Not sure how our blocks are going to look like, but especially because Cloud Ranger isn't going to get the job done on its own. I have a feeling that we need the Marsh Flitter in play. Let's see, 11. Then we can attack for 3, so that's 8. Then our opponent's down to 3, and Cloud Ranger and Marsh Flitter are both lethal. Yeah, we are looking at chump blocking a little bit next turn, but hopefully that will be alright. Opponent declined to make sap rollings this turn again, which is kind of weird because if he draws a land or has a land to play his Verdeloth, he would already be attacking with 2/2s. Okay, that's not the land he was looking for, but it looks like he has another great card here. Oh wow, that's insane. That's exactly the card that we didn't want to see. We could have killed the engine and there wouldn't have been much harm done, but now Torrent of Stone is almost worthless. So let's see, our opponent has 4 sap rollings coming out, so killing the engine with blockers is basically impossible. Yeah, what a beating. That's just absolutely brutal. I want to prevent some damage here, so maybe blocking like this is a smart idea. We could also block with a Sculler. No, but I don't really like that. I haven't really done the math on if we are dead or not. Would be kind of interesting to know. But let's just try it like this. It might be better to just block with the Sculler, because the Shell Dweller isn't going to have an effect on the game, and the Veteran Armor obviously has an effect. Another Torrent of Stone. Yeah, if we had a second mountain, we could actually play one and splice the other, and that would be great, but we don't, so we can kill a creature. We can try to kill the Thallid, for example, just to make sure that we aren't dead next turn. Let's see. Killing the Thallid leaves our opponent with 5 sap rollings, out of which 4 can attack, and the Microderm as well. So we would need to block the Ancient and the Microderm, and that could actually do it. 4, 5, 8 damage. But then we need 3 blockers, and the question is, where do these 3 blockers come from? I'm just going to try to torrent the Thallid. Who knows what's going to happen. Oh, there's also Verdeloth coming down, so the math actually is a bit tougher even. I would love to attack with Cloud Ranger here, but something tells me that we might be dead. Our opponent didn't go for it when he had the chance last time, so he might not go for it again. It's really a tough spot, a very tough spot. And if we threaten lethal, then of course our opponent is going to just attack with everything. Now let's do the math again. There is going to be 4 sap rollings and an additional one to be sacrificed. And if we attack with Cloud Code Ranger and nothing else, then we could have 4 blockers. If we want to deal the additional damage needed to make Cloud Code Ranger lethal, then we have to attack with Marsh Flitter as well and only have 3 blockers. So the 3 strongest creatures are probably Ancient, Mycoderm, and a Sap Rolling. And then we take 5 from this, and there is another 3 Sap Rollings coming through, which are potentially all 3/3. So that just kills us because they are 3/3 because Verdeloth gives them +1/+1, and the Mycoderm can be used to sacrifice the remaining one that's staying behind. And that's not even counting the triggered ability, the triggered ability of Verdeloth if our opponent happens to draw an untapped land. So that's not good for us. If we block Imperiosaur, the Ancient, and the Mycoderm, it's still lethal. So we simply need 4 blockers on defense, which does mean that the Marsh Flitter is potentially dying, which is kind of the worst part about the whole thing. But I don't see how to circumvent that. So let's attack with Cloud Goat and hope that the math was correct. And there is still the option that our opponent just doesn't go for it. But I don't think that we are winning this by being defensively. So the Ancient gets a second counter, so that's the additional Sap Rolling I talked about. Opponent draws an untapped land, so Verdeloth comes into play with an additional Sap Rolling. And that might be lethal now. All the Sap Rollings are 4/4, potentially. This is definitely the strongest creature. So if we block like this, then those all turn to 4/4s and we die. If we block like this, then all of these turn into 5/5s and we die. So yeah, I don't think there is a block that we can survive with. But I'm not even sure if this was only because of the untapped land, or if we would have been dead anyway. Don't really see how we can prevent most of the damage, simply because the Mycoderm is just killing us. That was an absolute blowout on his part. Now, yeah, I don't see how we can win this. One could argue that this attack was very reckless, but our opponent did give us an extra turn last time, and it's almost our only shot to make sure that Cloud Code Ranger can somehow carry this to victory, even though the plan kind of failed. So yeah, this is more than lethal. too bad. Yeah, I think we had a sweet deck, but the deck our opponent got together was just too much for us to handle. And we were also looking at quite a bad matchup because our removal spell couldn't kill the Mycoderm. We didn't draw the cheap removal spells, so we were kind of dominated from the get-go. Opponent drew Imperiosaur on turn 4 when we knew that he was holding a 5 and a 6 drop. And then he drew the Mycoderm after we decided to let the Ancient live for one more turn to get the beatdown going. So both of these decisions, the decision not to torrent really backfired because our opponent had the Mycoderm. And the fact that our opponent drew Imperiosaur when otherwise he would have potentially missed his turn 4 play, or maybe just, draw a 1 or 2 drop, made a huge difference as well. I still think that we had to play this as aggressively as possible, because the longer the game goes, the worse things are for us. Playing Bound in Silence on the Shell Dweller wasn't amazing, but we needed to use our mana, and every single point of damage counts in the end, so I'm not unhappy with that play. I would have been more happy if our opponent hadn't drawn the Shell Dweller, of course, but yeah, such is life, and hopefully you still enjoyed this. I mean, losing is part of Magic and Magic Online as well. I did ask you previously if you liked single elimination or Swiss drafts better, and that's of course the price of single elimination. I do agree that the games are more exciting and the competition is also tougher, which makes for better watching and learning. This was kind of a blowout, but I hope you still enjoyed this take on Modern Masters, and hopefully you learned 1 or 2 things. I'm Simon Götzen. This has been a rather short episode of Simon Says, but I'll be back next time. See you then.